Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Chris Hanna Show. I'm very excited today to have my guest on here. I've got Alena Sviderskaia. She's a leadership coach, speaker, facilitator. She holds a degree in psychology from McGill University, is an ICF certified coach. She's the creator of the successful Empowered to Lead program and co-creator of W2 Work and Wellness Amplified program. Alena draws on over 10 plus years of corporate career experience to help organizations become better places to work by turning managers into leaders and tapping into innate employee strengths to create a culture of passion and full engagement. Thank you so much for being here on the show this week. I appreciate you having you.
Oh, I'm so excited for our conversation.
So I'll start here with how I first came across you. I saw videos that you were creating, I believe maybe 2018, 2019. You started creating content on LinkedIn, started following you and some of your journey. And I always thought that what you were talking about just made sense. At that time, I was in the corporate world and I thought, wow, this is somebody who's, they're saying and they're speaking my language, because a lot of people who are managers struggle to actually lead. And so I would love if you can kind of kick us off by talking a little bit about what you do, your program, the coaching, and what got you into this lane that you've now been in.
Yeah. So for me, I think I will start with what got me into this. And first of all, I was always fascinated with human psychology and how we behave. And what I realized is that being in the corporate world, I have experienced this being led by people who were amazing and then being led by people who were not so amazing. And what I've noticed is that I was a different person when I was with, under different management, right? So, and then I realized, wow, this is such a major impact of how do we show up at work, how much we believe in ourselves, what we're, the choices we're going to make, the risk we're going to take. So then working in corporate world, I really realized that there is that need. And at the same time as I was working in the corporate world, I started realizing that I wasn't doing the things that I really wanted to do. And ironically, people were coming to me and complimenting me on things that were not part of my job. Right. It's the training, it's helping somebody grow. It's, and I was working in finance and accounting at the time. I went from psychology to finance and accounting, and I realized, oh my God, I was not doing what I wanted to do. And so slowly, as I was progressing, I started having those doubts and waking up in the middle of the night. It sounds cliche, but really things that were keeping me up at night and kind of preventing me from falling asleep is the thinking, oh my God, if I continue down this path, then, in 10, 20, 30 years, I will have a lot of different regrets about not really exploring what it could be like if I did the things that I really loved. And so that slowly, I got the courage. And then when I moved from Montreal, where I was living at the time, to Toronto, that was kind of a very convenient change because I had to leave the work I was doing before. And I felt there was the moment, okay, now or never type of thing, because there will never be perfect timing for this. And so right. I went into the leadership. Yeah.
So, okay, let me make sure I get this. So you're in Montreal. People are telling you in the corporate world, hey, love what you're doing. You obviously exhibit a lot of great leadership skills. You decide to make the move from Montreal to Toronto, and it's kind of like this time to reinvent yourself. And then you just went straight into, I'm now creating this business, and you knew it was going to be leadership coaching? Or take me through that initial, the genesis of that. And what does that, how did you pick that as the spot? Obviously you've got some of that talent that's coming there, but did you get a coach and mentor to help you, or are you figuring it out on your own? What's that journey look like?
So what happened in the beginning, at first I was thinking, even as I was in Montreal, I was thinking, okay, maybe I will start this life coaching business on the side. I was always fascinated with human psychology. I found one of my strengths was seeing the potential in other people before they saw it themselves. So I said, hey, why don't I do something in life coaching? And maybe that's going to be my side hustle. And then slowly, I'm going to grow my business. And so when I first arrived in Toronto, still having those fears, what if I'm not going to make it? Maybe it's too early to start a business. Maybe the timing is not the best. And so I actually started applying to finance jobs.
Okay.
And I was going through interviews for this amazing company. People were amazing. The interviews were going well. And then I was kind of expecting an offer from them. And something happened and they went away for 2 weeks. And then at first I was like, oh my God, they don't want me. The ego got a little bit bruised and I was a little bit sad. But what I realized as time progressed, I started getting excited, saying, oh my God, it's almost that they were making a decision for me.
Right.
And the offer was not coming. So I allowed my brain to go into this place. What if I actually go all in and start something? I don't know what it is yet. I didn't know what it was yet. And at that moment where I allowed my brain to go there, I received an email saying, oh my God, we're so sorry. The person was on vacation. We really want you to come work for us. Here's your offer. And at that moment, it felt like somebody punched me in the gut. It was not the reaction you want when you get an offer from an amazing company. And so that's where I realized, oh my God, that's not what I want to do. I want to go all in. I want to explore something else. And I owe it to myself. And I spent, in all honesty, I spent quite a bit of time reflecting on some of my clients in the past when I started doing life coaching, and I realized this is not what I want. I actually want to work with the types of people I used to work with, and I want to help people grow as leaders, because I realize that most managers have the best intentions. They took the promotion for the right reasons. They want to grow their people. They want to develop them, but they just don't know how. And also they don't get a lot of feedback. When we are not happy with managers, no, a lot of people they complain about managers, but not to the manager's face usually, but it's with their colleagues. And it almost kind of feels like it's common knowledge. Of course they know, but they don't. And they don't get that information. So I wanted to create that bridge and be that support, because managers play such a huge role for employees and employees' journey in companies. And so at first, what I decided to do to be safe, I joined an organization that was providing leadership training. I wanted to try it out. And so for a few years, I stayed with this organization, and I was facilitating leadership development.
So in a way, it's almost like they're finding the clients for you, and you're learning and crafting your thing. Or is that how it works?
It's the other way around. Is I would be finding my own clients, and they were providing the leadership materials, like the actual program. And so I had to hone the facilitation skills. I had to develop the sales skills, which were not at all in my comfort zone at all. And so I had to find my voice. I had to find that style of how do I want to reach out to clients, right? And how do I want to deliver? What's my style? So I spent a few years doing that. And then once I did that, I realized, well, I've tried this program, and there are a lot of things that I wanted to do differently. And I wanted to have the freedom to do it. So that's where I went all in on my own, doing what I do now.
And when was that? When did you finally make the decision you're all in on what you're doing?
Well, going my completely on my own.
Completely on your own, yeah.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yes.
And so you make this, I think it's an interesting story in the sense that you have a job offer, you're debating, what do you do? I'm going to try and go all of this. You obviously take a different path, and you get the opportunity to work with this other organization. You're going to get to beef up your skills, and you're continuing to evolve. And then you decide, I'm going all in. What was that journey like? Now it's just you.
It was scary as hell.
Okay.
It was scary as hell. And in my gut, I knew it was the right decision. I had no doubt that this was 100% the right decision, but it was still scary, because now you don't have that, whatever support you had with the other people that were doing the same thing, right? And being a business owner, that's one thing that probably many people don't realize, that it's a very lonely place at times.
Oh yes.
Right? It's, you see the videos on LinkedIn, and everything is peachy and it's great. And when you're working with clients and you see the pictures, kind of being on stage, talking in front of people, fantastic. But the majority of time is you're alone with your thoughts, with your fears, trying different things. Some work, some don't work. And you face that self-doubt and hesitation, and the ups are really amazing, but the downs can be very, very harsh too, because you're on your own in this. And yeah, for sure. But
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think it is an important thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that the decision obviously to go on your own and create your own business is a scary one. and you get so excited and you're pumped as soon as you start doing it, but then you might not see results right away, and
Yeah.
you might get rejected a lot. But the loneliness, I don't think people talk about enough or understand or realize. And it's
Yeah.
just it's such an important point that you bring up. And I'll be honest, for myself, there's many times where I go through the process, I'm thinking, what did I do? Like what I'm having a bit of imposter syndrome, kind of questioning myself. Did you
Mhm.
experience some of that through that process as well? Be like, did I make the right
100%.
call?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I also find that as you're starting your journey, that's very, very powerful because when I worked 10 years in corporate world, and I was working in finance and accounting. So for that, I had a degree. I had a degree, and an undergraduate degree. Then I did a certification, went through grueling study process and grueling exam. I got the letters. I was a CPA, so I knew there was a objective measure of my readiness to do the work. Yes, as you start a new job, there are moments where you need to learn this skill, you need to learn how to do this process, but objectively you have something to fall back on, saying, hey, you should be able to do this job. Like,
Yeah,
objectively, we measured your performance. But when you go into business, there are so many things that you're starting over. And that first time when you go and you talk to someone, and they put trust in you and saying, okay, yeah, go talk to my team, I want to invest money in you. You don't have that objective measure of you're great at what you do. So you
right.
have to be patient and be comfortable with being super uncomfortable, and
Yeah,
vulnerability and rejection, as you said. And it can be very hard because when you're going into your business, you want to help people. Yes, there is a financial aspect and freedom aspect, all of this, but majority of entrepreneurs that I speak to, they went into something because they're passionate about it. They
right.
really want to deliver amazing service. They want to help their clients. But then, how do you know if you're any good, especially when somebody pays you money and then you go in and you say, oh my God. So you have to be patient in accumulating that success, but also being open to fail at times and recognize that you're not going to have 100% perfect record at first. It's not possible when you're starting anything new. You're going to fail. This is the only way. And for a lot of very ambitious overachievers that are entrepreneurs, that is hard. That is hard.
Yes.
The ego is doesn't like that.
No, I'll admit that. Like there's things that I've kind of run up against, or you get rejected or ghosted when you maybe put a proposal of some sort
Mm,
together, you're like,
yeah.
what the hell am I doing wrong? Like, this doesn't make any sense, and you're confused and frustrated, maybe going through a whole host of emotions. The one thing that I've found, and I'm curious to get your take on this too, is like sometimes when you're going through the struggle, especially early on, you start to tell maybe people in your inner circle, family, friends, and did you ever have to deal with some people being like, well, maybe you should just go back into the corporate world? Or were people like really supportive and saying, hey, just keep on trucking, just keep going? Like, did you have to navigate some of that?
Yeah. And what's interesting, I actually had both. I had different responses, right? So some people would say, like, I was lucky enough that most of my family said, no, 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 like, keep going. You're good at this. Because they heard my reasoning behind wanting to do that. They knew that I was doing it for the right reasons. I wasn't looking for a quick, becoming a millionaire in 2 years. They knew I was doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
So they remembered that. But what's interesting, I was that person who was in my head saying, well, hey, if it doesn't work, I can always go back to the corporate world. But
Right.
so I was this person for myself,
Mm,
and that became an anchor in my business because it became the safety net that was always there, that plan B, that whenever I didn't want to do something, I'd be like, well, hey, if the business doesn't pick up in 6 months or 8 months or whatever, I'm just going to go back to the corporate world. And that was holding me back from going into the uncomfortable places, from being consistent sometimes, because it's like, well, if anything, I'll go back. So,
yeah, like in some ways, like not having a plan B forces you to really just kind of level up and take action
oh,
and
yeah.
commit.
Oh, yeah. And we have to make that conscious decision. And I remember to this day the moment where I made that decision. I remember where I was, because that was that very important fork in the road where you said, okay, that's no more plan B. I am not going back to the corporate world. I actually gave up my CPA. That's how powerful. I wanted to cut this, to say this was not a good career for you. Maybe in the future you may pivot into something else. Yes, but this should not be your safety net, because this is not something that leverages your strength. This is not something that brings you passion. So that cannot be a plan B. That's it. So once I cut this off and I said, I'm going to go all in until I succeed. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take me, but I'm going to do it. And that was a game changer. That was the chapter 2.
I absolutely love that. And I align with it so much. Like, I think about, I had straddled the whole side hustle thing and doing, the corporate world and be the CEO of a company. And it took really, I think, my wife actually being able to be honest and tell me, hey, Chris, you're so much more fulfilled doing this consulting and the side hustle stuff than the full-time stuff. You got to choose one. And the one option for you is really truly going all in and betting on yourself. And I need to hear that from her. But then when that happened, that was like the light bulb moment. It's like, you know what? I can't have the safety net. I can't have the plan B. I have to go all in. And that's the only way to do it.
Oh, that is so powerful. And I think we're really, and just reflecting on that, I think I am very grateful for the people that I had in my life that were able to point those things out, because when you are riddled with self-doubt and fears and all of this, and there are a lot of dark moments, right? So as an entrepreneur, there are a lot of dark moments, and then it colors your judgment, and it really messes with your way of thinking. So you're focusing on some of the things, and your mind can justify and say, hey, you know what? Let's go back to safety. Okay, we tried this. Too much of our up and down, inconsistent results. Like, come on, let's walk back. You had it really, really nicely. But it takes people like that who see us from a different angle. They don't see the emotions we feel on the inside. They're thinking more rationally. They are more objective in kind of seeing, hey, I see Chris when he was in corporate world. I see Chris when he does consulting. I see a huge difference, which you may not even necessarily be so aware of. Right. For me, it was my brother. I remember calling my brother right before I made that decision, like a few days before, where I cut off the plan B. I remember calling my brother and saying, you know what? It's been really frustrating. I've been doing a lot of things that are not working out for me. And I'm really thinking that it's time to go back into the corporate world. I really think that maybe I'll go, and maybe I'm going to not going to do the finance, but maybe I'm going to do training and development, which is kind of closer to my area of expertise. So my brain rationalizes, saying, hey, that's going to be safe. And I remember my brother saying, what the hell are you talking about? It shook me. I'm like, what? And he's like, are you kidding me right now? Like, he's like, so all of these things, like all of those things that you told me about and all the reasons, so let's go over them. And he basically repeated this whole thing. Is like, and he said, no, it's not you wanted this for a reason. I have no doubt you can do it. So what else can you do to change this? What are some of the things that are not working? What can you do differently? And I remember hearing them say it, hearing him say it, it was a game changer. So I'm really grateful for having people like that.
Yeah, it's important to have that support. And like, I think that there's this period early on in the entrepreneurial journey where like you do feel like you're doing a lot, but then also you got advice coming from everywhere, and sometimes shiny objects get introduced. Yes. Talk to me about having to navigate some of that early on.
Oh my God, this is doing a lot of things, but not really doing anything. I think the shiny objects, in general, I'm 4 years into this journey, and there's still so many shiny objects. There are new IT tools that are coming every second.
Every day. Yeah, it's crazy.
And you're thinking, oh my God, there's a new book, there's a podcast, there's this, there's so many shiny objects to this day still. And I think in the beginning, what happens a lot is that there is a lot of work that creates the visible, it has the feeling of work, but really it's procrastination. that is disguised as work because we are scared. We're dealing with fears. Like, for example, you mentioned something that you saw my post on LinkedIn when I first started doing that, right? And then doing something like this, it's very vulnerable because I said, hey, I want to attract the right type of client. I have a certain type of personality, certain approach to how I work. The best way to showcase this is to do videos. But
Right.
videos which I have never done before were so vulnerable.
Right.
And when you press this post, and I remember my first video, oh my God, my hands were like this. I'm looking at, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. But I posted this and it was so scary. And you're checking, how many likes you got and this. And so we have to kind of really differentiate the type of work we're doing to that kind of fills the time and prevents us from doing the really important work, and the type of work that is really necessary. Because in any given day, we could be wasting our time in planning, strategic planning, and researching, and doing this program and doing that program. And there's so many things, different tools, different whatever. But this is it. We just have to stop and ask ourselves, why am I doing this? What is the end goal? Is it really adding any value? Is it the really best use of my time? The really good test actually is, and I remember I read it in Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Week, I think, when he basically said, if you were forced, and I might be lying, of course, but it was something around, if you were forced to cut the number of hours in a day by half, life or death, you cannot, you have no option. If it's 4 hours a day you have to work, what are the key tasks that you're going to be doing? Now, what about if you only had 2 hours of work? And so that's being very conscious and intentional about that.
And I think a lot of people are not, and you may be conscious or intentional enough with that. I remember reading that book and I listen to it almost every year as an audiobook, just to kind of remind me, even though some of it's dated, but like cutting down the amount of time that you have for a task can be powerful. But I think a lot of people, they're busy, but they're not productive.
Yes.
Right? Because they're not focused on the right priorities. The hard part when you're solopreneur, entrepreneur, kind of doing it yourself, is you don't know what you don't know. And so you're like, okay, well, do I just put myself out there? Do I start building videos, start building social media content, which we know, like when I've talked about this before, this takes a lot of time and effort and work to put everything together. Do you build a website? Do you go and try and do networking events? Like, maybe some people just even forget to build out what their product is. They say, I want to be a coach as an example, but they haven't figured out, well, what is their system, right? Like, it comes down to figuring out where are the most important areas that you need to focus on.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need help and you need a little bit of guidance and course correction. The problem is that there's so many people selling at you as soon as you announce that you're doing stuff as well.
Oh yeah. Like my inbox is filled with, I help coaches to do this and this and that. And of course. And there's so much, there is an advantage to getting help for sure. But it's also, I think it's also around being accepting that sometimes you will steer into the wrong direction, and it's okay to do that once in a while. And then it's important to bring yourself back. Full transparency, most of my clients are coming from LinkedIn. That's a super important area of my life. The last 2 weeks have been extremely, unusually, abnormally busy for me. So I completely dropped the ball. And I feel guilty about it because I know this is the top priority that I need to be addressing, but I kind of disrupted my consistency with LinkedIn. And I have to accept that and say, okay, I have to restart this. I have to rebuild this again. And this will happen. Inevitable. You will fail multiple times and you have to pick yourself up and say, okay, learning my lessons and going back.
What was a big maybe lesson learned the hard way or mistake that you feel comfortable sharing that you've made in this journey?
Oh my goodness. Like, where do I begin? Like, honestly, I don't even know which one to start with. I think probably one of the biggest mistakes that I learned the hard way is that there's so many different ways to do the same thing. So when you look at coaches, for example, like leadership coaches and attracting clients, let's say, there are so many different ways to do it. We talked about it earlier, right before the podcast. You can do video. So this is something that really makes you passionate and you just flow. And it's like having a conversation like that. For me, zero preparation. I just go, I'm just staying present and I'm being vulnerable and I'm sharing. I love that. To me, this is the best thing. If I have to write a long, like a sales email, to me, that's poking my eyeballs out. Like that's just, please, this is cold calling. I'd rather die. I think, really, honestly, it's on. There's some things that where you need to really understand what your strengths are, what gives you energy, and do this and do that, because there's so many different ways to get to the results and be successful. By leveraging your strengths, you're going to get there much faster and with a different attitude, with a different level of enjoyment. Same thing for leadership. That's that's my key message to leaders is just you have your own leadership style, understand your strengths and leverage the hell out of them. Instead of trying to be somebody else. You're introvert, don't waste your energy on trying to be extroverted. You're not. You hone in on that ability to listen, ability to reflect on information, process it differently, and leverage that. Have people around you who are good at something else that you're not good at, but do not waste your time trying to be somebody else. And early in my business journey, I was listening to advice and what is the best way to do it. I remember sitting, making cold calls and almost crying and saying, what am I doing? This is horrible, feels terrible. I never pick up those calls. And now I'm the person on the other side who I'm bothering people. I'm manipulating them into staying on the call for another 3 seconds. This is so against who I am. And that's where I finally started doing LinkedIn videos and posts. And that's where the game changed.
Like, I think what you're saying there is so spot on. And I think it needs to be just reinforced, is that like when you can really go all in on being your authentic self, whether that's as a leader or as an entrepreneur, you're going to be more successful. And it's going to feel much more better for you and you're going to feel more fulfilled. You don't like cold calling, so you shouldn't do it. Some people love it. Absolutely go all in and do that.
And they're good at it. And they really, for them, it's like a game. I've seen people, I admire people who can do that.
Yeah.
To me, it's not something that I love. And also it goes back to the reason why we started having our own business. Why we decided to do our own business is so we can have more freedom to do the things that we love to do. So when we have to be very conscious about making those decisions very intentionally, because otherwise we can end up in a worse position where we have no freedom. It becomes a cage, the place where we're trying to escape from, and it goes against everything that we were chasing.
Right.
We have to be very intentional about because it's the day-to-day experience that matters. The end result is the financial reward or whatever it is. It's great. It's end result, but it's the day-to-day reality that you live in your business. So you have to be very intentional about how you structure your days, how you create that workspace and people around you, the type of clients that you take on, the type of services you provide, being conscious of how your body feels, because if we spend that time on self-reflection, the body tells you when you're going in the wrong direction. It will create those messages and signs, whether it's health signs or energy signs, whatever it is.
Yeah, like I can tell you that there have been times where I've started putting together like a proposal to consult with somebody, and I'm like, you know what? This isn't my customer. This isn't the type of work that I want to do. And early on, I would sit there and I'd submit these things and then like just kind of feel like, wow, I just wasted a lot of time because I really don't think I'm going to get it because I really don't want it. Mm-hmm. And even if they came to me, I don't know if I actually want to do the job.
Yeah.
Like early on, you almost, and this is at least from my perspective, you start trying to take whatever you can get because you're just trying to get money coming in.
That's a phase where you have no choice, or you think you have no choice. You feel that pressure to get as much business, get all, everybody who says yes, I need to get that. But yeah.
But then it creates, again, the shiny objects, a little bit of distraction. And then I think what you touched on about how you feel, like even physically is a big thing too. Like I can tell when there's times where I'm either overwhelmed or I'm doing the stuff that's just not
Yeah.
me. And I
Yeah.
don't feel like myself. I don't have the energy, the motivation, and it kind of
Yeah.
like it can cause this obviously ripple effect as well if you're doing stuff that you're not meant to do.
Yeah.
I felt the same thing, like I think about from a leadership perspective. There were times in my career where at various stops along the way, I wasn't leading the way that I felt like I should lead, as opposed to being told, well, you should lead this way. Well, like that way doesn't work because every
Mhm.
leader is different
Yeah. Yeah.
and every
Absolutely.
situation is different too. And so leaders need to adjust and be authentic. When I became my authentic self as a leader, I felt like the teams that I had worked better. When I tried to
Because they
fake it
know
till they
it.
make it, it didn't work.
They know, because people at the gut level, they feel when you have a mask on, right? So
Right.
when you're talking to a client, and I mean, you can take a program and you can say all the right things, and maybe they will say yes at the end, but there is that nagging feeling somewhere. There's something there. I don't know what it is. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something wrong. And so the same thing in the relationships, and leadership really is a lot about relationship, right? Is this
Right.
how do people feel about themselves really around you? So that's where, because you can bring out different sides of people, right? The same person can work in different organizations and different teams and be a different person. Same thing with personal relationships,
Yeah.
friends as well. And so really it's when we are wearing a mask, even if we do it really well, not only it creates more loneliness for the person who is wearing the mask, because like for example, if you're pretending to be somebody else, you feel like this is not who I am.
Right.
And I know people like me, but they don't like me for who I am. They like me for the person I created and that mask that I'm wearing. So that creates a barrier between that prevents people from connecting to people on a genuine level. But also, most of the time, people will feel the fakeness.
Right.
Maybe it came from the best intentions, but still there is something where you're not really vulnerable, you don't really open up, and you're trying to be, let's say it happens when people act confident, faking till they make it, so to
Right.
speak, right? And so they pretend to be more confident than they really are, but it actually creates barrier that prevents people from connecting on deeper level. There's nothing worse than nothing worse, probably like exaggeration, but it's a disservice to the team when the leader pretends that they are 100% confident in what they're doing. They don't
That they
make
know everything.
mistakes. They know everything, because yeah, I know you're nodding. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about, right? Like, and that's where I came to believe, and when I would coach people or even my team in this space and leadership as well, I would always say it's okay as a leader to say you don't know, but
Oh
we're
yeah,
going to figure it out together.
it's necessary.
That's right.
It's necessary to say when you don't know, to say, I don't know. It's also when, as a leader, you don't pretend to know all the answers. You also send a very powerful message to the team that I trust you to be the expert in your field. I am a supporting role. I'm helping you get the results. And if I don't need to know all the answers because I trust you.
Right.
And if I need to answer this to whoever, I know where I can get it.
Yeah.
That is something that people don't realize, is when the leader is trying to know all the answers, be caught up in all the details and the weeds, it sends a message to the team. I don't trust you.
Yep.
I don't think you can do the good job. So I need to take it on myself.
Well, a big part of your program, if I'm not mistaken, is about empowerment, is it not?
Absolutely. It's really about understanding your strength. It's about being more intentional about the decisions you make and how you show up, and really developing that consistency in leadership through habits, because behavioral change is very difficult, and we can't expect someone to accumulate behaviors and habits for 20 years, whether it's from personal experiences or from watching other leaders, and then in 2 weeks just become a different person. No,
Yeah.
there's a lot of unlearning and undoing that needs to happen first, and it needs to happen in a very safe environment where people really feel like it's confidential, where they feel that they can be themselves, and they are, they're safe to admit the mistakes and say, hey, yes, I don't feel comfortable in my role. I don't know exactly what my role is, if I'm honest.
Right.
I don't get any feedback. I don't know if I'm struggling. I feel like I'm struggling, but yeah.
Well, that's what I think, and you have I've talked about this elsewhere too, where like communication is so important when it
Yeah.
comes to leadership. All right. And I'm a big believer in that every problem that happens is a communication problem. It's a
Yes.
breakdown that happens.
Yeah.
It's either we didn't have the conversation we needed to have, we didn't have the conversation with the right person, it wasn't the right topic. It's one of those three normally.
Yeah, yeah. Or it's also, and communication also is a lot about translating what you have in your mind, and maybe the visual you have or the feeling that you have, translating it to someone, and then they have to take this and internalize. So, just yesterday I had this session on difficult conversations, and really there's so many different ways to have that conversation, but it's a skill that needs to be learned and practiced and practiced and practiced some more before you get better at it. But communication is extremely important, and I think coupled with lack of self-awareness for all of us, we all suck at self-awareness. We think we're better at it than we are.
Yep.
So coupled with sometimes poor communication skills, or lack of planning of important communications, or lack of kind of testing the alignment. Like, for example, I have sometimes leaders who come to me and they say, okay, can you work with me on providing feedback to this person? Their performance has been suffering. And they then go on for 5 minutes saying, hey, I really care about them. I want to support them. I don't want them to feel like I'm attacking them. I don't want to feel, and I tell them, do you actually say that to the person? And they say no. And I said, well, just say that.
I was exactly going to say that. Exactly.
Well, just say that to them. And because that's powerful, because that sets the tone of the conversation, saying, hey, I don't want, I'm really nervous about this conversation. I know it's uncomfortable for me to tell you this because I really respect you. I really want to support you, but we need to address it. And I'm curious to hear your side of the story. But being human, being vulnerable, and saying, hey, this conversation, not really comfortable for me, but I think it's important to have it anyway.
I totally agree. Like, I recently coached a business owner who was having trouble with their employee, and that they made the decision that they want to part ways. And I said, have you ever had to fire someone before? And he said, no, they've never done it. So the decision that they are making, that they want to move forward with terminating someone, I'm like, unfortunately, I've done it. So I took them through the process. I said, if you're going to do it, you got to do it with compassion. But I said, the thing I'm going to ask you before we move down this path, I said, have you done everything that you need to do as a leader? And did you set this person up to fail in some way? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, were they trained properly? Did you give them the support and the coaching? Do they even know that there's a problem?
Did they know the expectations and all of this? There's so many things. Was it the right person for the right task and the role and all of this? Absolutely. And the moment people start asking those questions to themselves, the conversation changes. When you go into the conversation saying, hey, I fully recognize that I might have contributed to the problem, and I'm genuinely curious about learning what that could be, so then I could learn from it and not make the same mistakes. Because leaders, like we said, lack of feedback, even more so than for employees, and they don't know what they don't know. So it's creating that safe space so your team can provide this feedback, but also you need to then follow up with action.
Of course.
It needs to be, to develop trust. You need to say, hey, you told me you were vulnerable with me. I know it's uncomfortable to say your boss, hey, yeah, you weren't really clear. And when you said this is the way you said it. And it was, it's hard for me to come for you to support because you're short-tempered sometimes and you get irritated. So the next time I have a question, I go to somebody else. Yeah. It is hard to say to your boss. But then it's when they do, you have to make sure that this is actually taken into consideration and you take action on it. So next time they actually share that with you again.
Like with your program, do you help certain type of leader or leaders that are in part of certain industries, or like how do you define like the type of leaders that you work with?
It really is about, it's interesting. I was thinking about this and I was reflecting on who my perfect client is. And I think it's really not about the industry or not the type of leader. It's more about the mindset of senior leadership team. Mm-hmm. When I encounter clients, who say, well, our senior leadership, they're perfectly fine. They've been in the position for 20, 30 years. So they don't
Right.
really need any coaching or training. They're good. But we just need to fix the middle manager or our new employees or new managers. That's a big red flag for me. If there is,
Absolutely.
so that is something, because what I know that there is that ceiling to just how much I can make a difference. Because if we have managers who are excited about change, but then they say, okay, you telling me that I need to have pre-scheduled regular one-on-ones with my team, not wait for them to come to me, because they will never come to you just for problems. You need to proactively build that one-on-one time where they know they're going to show up every week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, depending on the need. And that's where you build your trust. So then one of those meetings, they'll start opening up. Right. So it's creating that environment. So you're telling me I need to do this with my team, but my boss never does this to me. So my boss just says, hey, whenever you have a problem, just come to me. So that when there is that disconnect, that to me, it can be a perfect industry. Everything else is gonna be great. But just that to me is a big red flag in a client.
Yeah.
But then you can, I work with different organizations. Some of them are manufacturing, IT, service providers. It's more about the mindset of that senior leadership team, that they're willing to look at their own blind spots and say, hey, I want to invest in my people. It's not go fix them, but it's they're really valuable to me. I would love to invest in them. That's what I'm looking for.
And I think that's an important piece that I think a lot of leaders at the highest of levels need to understand, is that their people that they have on their team are their greatest asset. And so invest in them. You're going to get more ROI back than anything else as you continue to invest in them, because they're going to grow. They're going to be more engaged. They're going to be more aligned to the mission. And as they grow, they also help other people grow too as leaders.
Yeah. But it also, there needs to be this willingness to look at your own blind spots, because leadership is again, that probably will sound like a cliche, but it is a journey, meaning that there will never be a day where you say, okay, I've taken this course, I've done this, now that's it, I've graduated, I'm good. No, because you will encounter situations where you have to grow again, and there will be more uncomfortable situations. And all of a sudden you worked with your team, now you went through all the things, you set them up for success, great team. Now one person leaves, one new person comes in, and it's all of a sudden there are problems again, and it's a whole new team. Or you manage to do the feedback, you're mastering it, you're doing great, and then there's one person who just doesn't feel motivated, who just doesn't take action on what they promised, and then you have to, again, you're challenged again. So I think leaders need to recognize that it's something that will never, this journey, the learning journey, will never stop.
It definitely 100%
It never ever stops. And just because you've been in a leadership position for 20, 30, 40 years means nothing.
Yeah.
It means nothing, because you could still have the same blind spots, and they're actually maybe even more solidified, and you're even more blind to them, just because, well, I've been a leader for 20, 30 years, I must be good. Because you don't hear anything otherwise.
That's right. Well, I think that's the hardest part with leadership coaching, is trying to convince senior leaders that they themselves need it.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because they probably think that I know what I'm doing. Like, I've got to that level, I'm good.
Yes. This is definitely, I would say you're right. This is the most challenging thing.
Yeah. So how do people work with you? What's the best way that they can follow you, connect with you? Obviously on the screen here for those who are watching, I've got a ticker that's kind of saying stuff, but how do people best connect with you to learn more about your program, to follow along with you in the content that you put out? How do they best connect with you?
So LinkedIn is probably my best digital home. That's where I spend the most time, except for the last 2 weeks. But this is probably the best way to connect with me. That's where I post my leadership content, the videos, the post tools and techniques and learnings from working with different organizations. So definitely that would be the best way. There's also my website where I post sometimes the new services, new offerings, and we can start it from there.
Well, this has been an absolutely phenomenal episode. I knew it would be. I knew going in, I'm like, I saw my wife last night, I'm like, this is going to be a good one. And you did not disappoint. Before we kind of sign off, any final words of wisdom you want to share with entrepreneurs who are out there looking to make that leap, or other leaders who are out there?
I say for entrepreneurs, for sure, it's something where connect with other people, who are going through similar journeys, because throughout the years, I found that's something that really helped me. It's connecting to people who elevate you, who can provide that, hey, celebrate your successes, and then kind of help you see the other side when you're struggling. And in terms of leaders, I think the main lesson is that leadership is a skill set that is practiced consistently. Just whatever you are in your journey, and whatever hesitations or fears you have, trust me, you're not alone. I hear things in my one-on-ones that sometimes become confessionals, where people say, I'm afraid to admit this to anyone else, because I'm seen as this confident leader with 10, 15 years of experience, but I'm struggling in this, and I don't know how to do this, and sometimes I feel this. You're not alone, trust me. And you can always get better. And just because you've made progress, and you feel sometimes you get that negative feedback, or you hear somebody talking behind your back, do not discount anything that you have done so far. This is normal. This is expected. It is a wild ride, but it's so rewarding. And you can always get better with the right support.
I think what you said there with "you are not alone," I think that message applies to both leaders
Yes.
and to entrepreneurs. And I think that's a great way to really end this. And you think about that, is that you are not alone. There
Yeah.
are people out there who are willing to help, listen, support people going through the same challenges as you, depending what world you're in. There's somebody going through the exact same thing. It's okay to be vulnerable.
Yes, find your tribe and find your community. Find whether it's as a leader, maybe it's the building relationship with another leader, like as a co-mentorship or
Right.
group leadership program, or a coach or something. But there's always help, and in a way that works best for you, right? We have to take into account, who is that person who fits with my personality, who gets me. There are so many different options. That's the advantage. It can be overwhelming, yes, but the advantage is there's always somebody who gets you, who will support you in a way that works for you.
Absolutely. Well, again, I hope anybody watching this, listening to this, was taking notes, because there is a plethora of different tidbits, advice, insights into all aspects of this journey. Again, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
what a pleasure. I knew it's going to be a blast.
Yeah. All right,
Thank you,
audience.
Chris.
Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Again, remember, whatever you do, go all in.